All right, I will call this meeting to order at this time. Welcome to our special budget meeting for Monday, January 26th. It's 1 o'clock, just after, and we'll get started. Call the meeting to order, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, I do have something I want to read out, and I hereby direct the treasurer on my behalf, with the support of appropriate municipal staff, to present the mayor's proposed 2026 budget. Any amendments supported by two-thirds council vote this afternoon will be recorded as council recommended amendments and carried forward for consideration following the public consultation and council deliberation on February the 18th, 2026. And so I'll pass this over right now to Carolyn. I believe you have comments, or to Ralph first. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And on your behalf to council, I'd like to present the report on the mayor's draft budget for 2026. You received it with the agenda. It's in a familiar format that's similar to last year's, not quite as elaborate, because we are not positive as to how this is going to turn out, because it's our first time doing it this way. What we are proposing today is that council receive the 2026 mayor's draft budget, and that council directs staff to undertake public consultation that will conclude February 9th. That's to conclude at 9 a.m., I believe, on the 9th, so that there is enough time for those consultations to be submitted in writing to the clerk so that they can be reviewed and provided in a context to the mayor, that they can be actually built into numbers that would impact the budget so that they can be decided upon. And that any proposed amendments, including those that come from council after this meeting, be provided to the mayor for consideration for the special council meeting on February 18th. So this is a slightly different process. As many of you are aware, in May, the province decided that a number of municipalities should have strong mayor powers, and with great powers come great responsibility. So the mayor is now the man responsible for the budget for the municipality. Hence, this is the mayor's draft budget. If you go through the documents, you will find that it's laid out similar to last year. You have an executive summary with 2 pages showing you the levy supported programs and the levy requirement, and then the non-levy programs, namely water and wastewater, and the fact that they are balanced both to zero. Then you will get, in the next tab over, is the levy supported programs, first at a summary by department level, then at a detail level by department level, showing what each department's requirement from the levy is. And then there is a final section in that part 2 that goes through all of the expenses based on categories. So that's where you will find all of the tax revenues. That's where you'll find all the grant revenues. That's also where you'll find all the salaries and wages, the insurance premiums, and those things by category summed across all of the levy programs. Just to make that distinction, I think last year we might have had a little miscommunication as to which ones were in that object project piece as opposed to in the water wastewater piece. That said, the third tab is your water wastewater programs, first in a quick summarized, and then secondly in a longer detailed version. Then on to section 4, which is your capital projects. Slight variation on how capital projects are presented in this book, in that you will see the rollover projects from 2025 that have to be completed in 26 first. Then you will see those projects that have been recommended for this year. And then you will also see another 2 pages of projects that were on the radar but didn't make the grade. One section are those that between the mayor and staff have agreed that they could be postponed. The last list is those that staff had already said could be postponed before we even spoke with the mayor. So those are there just as information, although I will point out when we get there that there were a couple of projects that got pulled out from below the line to above the line during discussions. Get to tab 5 is a quick analysis of the potential tax implications of this budget, which we'll go over in a second. Then 6 is your reserves, projecting where they are at the end of 25 and what we'd be drawing from them in order to perform this budget. And then the last tab, 7, is a schedule of the debt that the municipality currently has as of December 31st, 2025. Excuse me. So in summary, as presented, the 2026 mayor's draft budget proposes a $9,949,965 taxation for our municipality's purposes. This does not include what the county will be asking us to collect on their behalf or what the province expects us to collect on the school board's behalf. This is a 5.94% in total dollars in terms of that levy, but due to the increase in assessment, that will dilute it down to a 4.52% in the actual tax rate for the North Middlesex portion. The mayor's budget also proposes authority to spend $12,114,926 on waste and wastewater operations and capital projects. These are totally non-levy funded and are self-funded by water wastewater rates and their reserves. Just as a note, in the past, you've always liked to hear that staff has checked with the surrounding municipalities as to what are the possible increases around us. And those who have responded that we can verify is Adelaide Metcalfe is looking at a 5.08% increase. Strathroy Caradoc, 4.53. Lucan Biddulph at 5.62. Middlesex Center is 5.71. Thames Center, 6.7%. The other municipalities are still in the same process as we are, but from the sounds from their treasurers, they will be in a similar ballpark as to those numbers. The last number I should add is county recently passed their budget at, I believe it was 3.8%, Mr. Mayor. Okay. So that is the environment in which we are setting up this budget. If we take a quick pause, anyone have any questions at this point before I start boring you to death with the details? Yes,
Councilor Nelson,
Mr.
yeah.
Martin.
Thank you, Treasurer. What impact does the 3.8% from the county have on the levy have on our North Middlesex ratepayers?
That will depend on the assessment of each ratepayer. I haven't worked out those numbers because normally there is no such thing as the average ratepayer. I know a lot of treasurers like to say, oh, on 100%, 100,000 assessment, this is the dollar value. But I have not worked those numbers out until we get past this and we get on to doing the tax levy bylaw. And at that point, we'll have that discussion as to what the actual dollar values work out to be.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, just to clarify the process, because it is new this year. I've heard a few different dates, and I just want to get this clear in my head. If there are changes to be made, suggested, I should say, does the motion have to occur today? Or can it occur at the February 4th council meeting, or February 9th is when consultation closes on the process? Can suggestions be put forward to the mayor directly? How does that process work?
I'm going to defer to the clerk on that since she's going to be stick handling it.
Thank you, and through you, your worship, to the counselor. So there is a few dates and it is a very new process, so any questions are welcome. Tonight or this afternoon, the budget will be presented. There will be an explanation of the public consultation period, and then the mayor will open the floor to council to have discussion and propose amendments. If there are any proposed amendments today, a motion will be needed to be tabled with a mover, seconder, and then a 2/3 vote. If the motion receives like approval today, it will go on to a master list, which will then be combined with public consultation and feedback, reviewed by the Director of Finance, Treasurer, and the Mayor, CAO, myself, for bringing back to February 18th, where all the amendments will be tabled. Future amendments can be made. We will not have amendments made on the floor February 4th, I don't believe. However, if you have comments, feedback, want proposed amendments, then they will go on to that list. So there will be amendments made tonight if council so wishes, but they need to receive 2/3 to proceed to be able to be reviewed by the mayor. Does that clarify?
In part. So just to go back to your second last sentence there. If we don't make amendments today, we can still bring forward ideas for February 9th, and it'll still go to the meeting on the 18th.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Counselor Daigle.
Just for clarification, 2/3 is for?
Thank you, and through you, it is. And if our member that is online is unable to provide a vote and there is a tie, the mayor would then provide a tiebreaker vote.
Any other questions right now? Seeing none, we'll start in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All right, starting under tab 1, we have the executive summary, which gives you the broad strokes of the increases. You will find that essentially the $9,949,965 cash requirement is being driven by a fairly flat operating fund and a significant decrease in funding in the capital budget, which has led to that 567,000 increase in requirement. While the cash short flow surplus is balanced at 0 as required by legislation, the amendments that will happen through the public sector accounting standards indicates that we will probably have a $2.5 million deficit on the financial statements that the corporation will be producing that year. That also will show you those items that are in the cash requirements budget, which are actually not cash in terms of, they're not revenues, excuse me, as opposed to they are cash we receive, but they're not revenue for PSAB purposes. And then it also shows you those expenses which aren't cash outlays, but are expenses as far as PSAB concerns, which is how we end up in that deficit from a balanced position. The second page of the executive overviews shows you the wastewater process. It shows that the $12,114,926 of expenditures is actually an overall decrease of almost 1.4 million from the prior year's expenditures. with a matching decrease in revenues to stay balanced. And again, it will show you those cash items that aren't revenues and those non-cash items that are expenses to show that although wastewater is in a balance as far as cash is concerned, they're predicting to have about a 3.9 million surplus on their portion of the financial statements. So between the two, the municipality of North Middlesex, before consolidation with Lake Huron Public Water Supply Services, of which you are a 2.94% owner, your consolidated statements should show a slight surplus for the year at a accounting level, while still being at a balance at a cash requirements level as required. Any questions on that portion?
Questions on that? Go ahead, Counselor.
As a 2.5% ownership, do we generate any revenue on the pipeline?
What happens is you get an increase or decrease in your equity position based on how well they do. So each year, the last piece of creating the financial statements is to consolidate in 2.94% of their assets, their liabilities, their equity. And it makes a slight variation in how your statements look compared to what we would do if we were only doing our own operations. But what it does is it gives you a boost of about, I want to say 1.7 to $2 million in terms of overall accumulated surplus for the corporation. And there's a plus and minus in terms of you pick up a portion of their cash receivables and a portion of their long-term debt and their assets and that type of thing, which are the pieces that balance out to that accumulated surplus pickup.
So is that then combined with the same water line that comes from Lake Erie? Is it the same system or is it just a Lake Huron?
It's just Lake Huron the Lake Huron Primary Water Supply Service is a corporation that is wholly owned by its member municipalities, and we own 2.94% relative to the rest of the municipalities. And the total value of that entity is divided up to those municipalities, and we have to include it in our consolidated statements when we produce our PSAB compliant statements.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, go ahead.
All right. Under tab 2 is the bulk of the information in that it has the most lines to deal with. The first 4 pages are a summary of the cash requirement or contribution to cash by each of the different program areas that leads up to the balanced cash requirement at the end. In there, you will be able to find the various areas that have the widest swings. General government, you'll notice, has got a negative variance of 1.8 million. That is predominantly due to the loss of about 2.5 million in revenues that were achieved last year through the loan from the county. There are a number of other swings in the revenue side that are causing some other issues. One is 885,000 that we received from the county as their portion of a project that had been completed in 2024, but we didn't get the books cleaned up until 25. So it kind of stuck out like a sore thumb last year. There are a number of increases as well. Most of them are not as drastic. But if you would like to take the time to go over those, you can. And once you pick out a line there that you want to have further detail on, And I suggest you move on to then the 30 pages further on, which then gives you the detail behind those summarized numbers. So for instance, that general government piece that we were just talking about, that drop, if we go to page 2 of 30, you'll see general government listed there, and the first number off the top of the page is the 2.5 million that we lose in that proceeds from loan. You'll also notice that there's a reduction of 4.4 million in transfer to reserves. So by the time we get to the bottom, it explains the 1.8 million. So it's a little bit of juggling to go back and forth. In the future, we'll have an electronic version of this where you can actually just click on the line that you want to question and it'll drill down at the line instead of you having to do this awkward flip back and forth. I would encourage council to go through and look at the lines and pick out lines that they think don't look right, that they don't understand why there's a variance, and reach out either to the director of the area or myself, and we will try and fill in the background as to what is happening with those numbers for you. We could try and do it here in open session, but those who have been on the budget committee the last 2 years know how in-depth those discussions can get and how long it takes to find all of the details. So I would recommend you do that over the next few days before the 9th in order to facilitate any amendments that you might want to put forward. After the 30 pages, the very last 5 pages of this section are where the numbers are amalgamated by type. So this is where you're going to find how much did we get in provincial loans? How much did we get in grave opening fees? How much did we pay in salaries and wages? What was our insurance premiums? Those are sorted here, and basically it's the total for the whole organized. Again, let me do this correctly. I did this wrong last year, so I'm trying to catch myself this year. These 5 pages show the summary of those types of expenses for the levy programs. It does not include the water, wastewater. Those are in their own section, and there's a piece there where you can do this same process of looking them up. So in here is where you would look at the change in municipal drains maintenance costs and things of that nature and be able to pinpoint the larger numbers. The capital projects that we'll be discussing later on that have been promoted for recommendation are included in these numbers. So you will find your capital project costs are already accounted for in this section. They are itemized in greater detail in the tab for capital, but the dollar values are represented here in terms of where they will hit in the actual financial reporting.
I
So,
think Ralph, Councilor Nerdy, you have a question.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ralph, go back to page 1. I just want to quick page 1 of 5. When it says provincial grant subtotal, there's 3 at the top and then a couple more at the bottom. Are we going to find out what those were? Or why are they broken down into 3 categories and not just 1?
It has a lot to do with what I inherited, and that there's actually 3 or 4 different object codes for provincial grants. It's the offshoot of having had so many different treasurers and so many of them wanting to track things slightly differently, that there are three or 4 different versions of provincial grants there. And the interesting thing is that the one that shows the 1.1 million drop, is actually not a provincial grant. That was an error on my part last year, putting the Canada Community Building Fund, which is actually a federal program, in a provincial line. So that is now showing up on gas tax allocation bridges subtotal. Because I don't have a CCBF, it's actually the third line on the page. So you'll see that one is up 810 versus the other one is down by 1.1. So our gas tax money this year is down by a couple $100,000.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ralph.
Now, if anyone else wants to get into further detail on those kind of detail lines that, next couple of weeks, just give me a holler and we can go over and I can walk you through the GL accounts that build up to it. And we can actually look at what programs drove the numbers each year. Okay, jumping into section 3, which is your water wastewater. Again, the first couple of pages, and I apologize, these ones are not numbered, are your wastewater area broken down into its different subsections in terms of where its revenue is coming from. Biggest thing to note, of course, is the metered rate subtotal is taking a nosedive this year after the change in the rate structure and the reduction in the rates. So that is what we're estimated it's going to drop this year. Next couple of lines give you overall costs. So similar to how the other section was by object code, water, wastewater, since it is a single entity, is by object code. So you can see where the different cost pressures are there. Then after the first 4 pages, everything is repeated but broken out into the lines that develop up each of the subsections. So equivalent to the detail line that was done previously in the levy area by program area. You have it repeated here for water, wastewater, and you can see the various numbers and how they break down. I will point out now for anybody who's curious about the color coding. The blue shading on the 23, 24, and 25 columns is to stress the fact that those numbers are still unaudited. They are still moving. As a matter of fact, I can tell you we added $206,000 of fuel costs that had not been properly recorded in 24 just last week. So there are things like that are still being captured and corrected in old numbers. So please take those 3 columns with a pound of salt. The other thing that you'll notice is on, not sure what page number it is, but there is the page that shows transfer from reserves to water, wastewater. There is one number highlighted in green, $708. It's the last page of the non-levy proceeds detail. Yeah. There it is on the screen right now.
Shows the first page.
It's the first page of the section, second portion, sorry. Okay, sorry. The
200
reason I
277.08. That's the one.
Yeah. The reason I'm pointing it out is that that is a draw from reserves in order to balance the water wastewater area. Traditionally, your water wastewater area is supposed to at least add to its reserves each year to be able to cover its capital costs in the future. This year, it's actually pulling from reserves to pay for operations. So just to make sure you're aware of that, I highlighted it in green for you. Okay, before I move on, any questions on that section?
Don't see any, go ahead.
Okay, so jumping to section 4, which are the capital projects for 2026. And as senior management knows, I was touting this as big tickets capital projects. Because this year, you'll see I've added a new column that says TCA or non-TCA. Just to clarify the fact that if an item, even though it's a large value item, if it doesn't create a capital asset at the end of it, it's technically not capital. It is going to be charged to your operating lines. So in here, everything that says non-TCA has been charged back to the department under one of its operating lines. Everything that is a TCA is showing up as a capital expenditure back in the capital portion of the cash requirements piece. So just so that you're aware of where you're going to find these when you go and look back to the other lines as to where they show up. There are 2 projects that were left over from 2025 that need to be completed. They'll require $195,000 from reserves to pay for them. They were coming from reserves last year. That money stayed in reserves because the project didn't happen. So it's just a repeat so that there is budget authority to access those funds this year because, of course, last year's budget has expired and the authority has gone away. Then there are another 33 projects listed, which are the projects that have been approved. It shows you under estimated expenditures, a total number and then a 2026 number. And if you look at the William Street pumping station upgrade, you'll see why there's a significance there. That project is going to cost $7.5 million to do, but only $1.5 million of that is going to be spent in 2026. So that's the only portion they're being asked for right now. But by approving the project, you have essentially approved $7.5 million, not $1.5 million. That's why both numbers are there for you to see. The $1.5 million is going to be partially funded by a provincial grant, which is calculated out at the ratio that your eligible expenses are refunded. Now, overall, that $7.5 million is getting funding of $5 million. Is that true, Sam?
5.5.
So over the course of the $7.5 million being spent, we will get back $5.5 million. But in 26, we are only going to get $1.05 million of that money towards the $1.5 million that we're scheduling to spend. So that's how those numbers are there and represented. So although these 33 projects represent $11.3 million of spending in 2026, it actually commits you to $17.8 million in funding over the next couple of years to complete those projects once they're started. So just to be aware, it's similar to how you used to get a 5-year project, 5-year planning project that told you what the plans were for going forward. This is more in case of if you approve these projects, these are the dollars you're committed to. It's not just this is the plan. This is what you're committing to by committing to these 33 projects. 17.8 million with 11.3 of it this year. After those first 2 pages, there are another 3 pages, one of which shows you projects that were reconsidered by the committee. They are highlighted in a bit of a orangey color. These were ones that senior staff felt could be pushed off, but weren't positive that they weren't higher priority. And then the last page and a bit are highlighted yellow. Those were the ones that staff were very confident could be pushed off to the future without any repercussions, and they're highlighted in yellow.
So
Last thing to point out before I go to
ahead.
questions is there are on page 1 and 2 of the list, two projects that are highlighted in dark blue. Those were, there's one there and there's the other. Those two projects were originally not on the approved list, but when the committee went through, they recommended to the mayor and he agreed to pull them up into the approved projects to be recommended for doing, because they felt there was enough merit to the cost of those projects to actually include them. Questions?
So I think, would council like to hear staff go over these projects a little bit to describe them? What's being done? We have the senior staff here if that's up to council's wish, but I think maybe there should be some information from staff to help clarify what we're doing. Okay? So let's just start down the list of what was approved and we'd ask the senior staff members to talk about them.
Kent, are you taking care of community services? Or is Brandon?
Nope, I will. So the first one on the list is the West Williams roof replacement. That project was one that was approved this year. With the early snowfall, they just haven't been able to get to that roof yet, but they're planning on being there early February, so it was a push.
Queen Street reconstruction phase 2, if council will recall, that was a detailed design project that was approved in 2025. The design sits somewhere between 70 to 90% finished, but that's redesign of Queen Street from Main Street to the outer limits, Anita Shipley, William and Stewart Street, all the way to the pumping stations. So that project has a roughly 20 to 30% left in the detailed design phase.
So as we keep going through this, if there's any questions, just raise your hand and we'll carry on.
So the William Street pumping station upgrade, as Ralph had alluded to, that was the reconstruction project that we received provincial funding for. So that is reconstructing the William Street pumping station and then some expansion and retrofit work at the Elsa Craig wastewater treatment plant. So that project has been phased over a couple of years. It's a big project, roughly 18 to 24 months worth of construction. And there are a lot of parts with very, very long lead times. So the way that staff have set this up in consultation with the province is that this year, which is why the numbers are so low, we would award the project. We would order all the long material stuff that would take the year and a half to arrive. And then likely by the end of 25-ish, roughly early into 26 is when the actual construction would start. Yes, sorry, 27 would be when the construction starts, and then it would finish in 28. My apologies. So this year we would order parts, and then construction would either start at the end of the year or into the next year. And then the Mount Carmel Reservoir project, again, that was one that we've got provincial funding for. So that is to completely rebuild the Mount Carmel Reservoir. The way that we've set up the funding with the province so far is that we plan to do all of the work this year, assuming we can get through the agreement with the province in time. It's not a super long construction. It's more just coordinating with Lake Huron folks, because we have to do a lot of bypass work and then getting through the agreement stuff with the province. So that is one that we're hoping to build all this year, which is why the numbers show that we're spending the entire thing this year.
Councillor Canellison.
Sam, when would you have to tender that out for the Mount Carmel Reservoir?
Through your worship to the councillor, the way that we've been doing tenders currently is that I'm expecting to tender in the next week or two. And so as soon as budget is or isn't passed, the tender will be closed. So my hope is that it's tendered in the next week or two, and then it will just be shelf ready for whenever budget is approved.
Okay.
C556 Fern Hill Culvert. This is a culvert on Fern Hill between Bear Creek and New Ontario. It is a shared culvert with Middlesex Center. It's a culvert that is recommended through Middlesex and us to be reconstructed in 2026. Middlesex has already gotten the design done and they are going to reconstruct it this year. So that dollar value there is what our half of the project would be. The Park Hill Lagoon study, that is to finish up a project that was started last year. If council will recall, RVA was hired to look at feasibility options at the lagoons in the way of what can we do there that isn't a $40 million wastewater treatment plant. So that activity is ongoing. It's expected that it would be a couple more months of work. And as soon as that would be done, we would be able to bring some information back in front of council as to what other options are there for longevity to the lagoons as opposed to a wastewater treatment plant.
The fresh gravel program, for this year would be about 870,000. So yeah. Oh, the other one is, West Quarters Drive paving. This would be the one section of asphalt we would be redoing this year between Harmony and McGinnis.
The bunker gear replacement is to replace aging sets of bunker gear. They have a 10-year lifespan. So that's just our regular cycle. And then the SCBA replacement is to replace all of the SCBA and filling equipment. They're becoming to the end of their 15-year life cycle.
Deputy Mayor Hodgins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For our fire chief, number one, bunker gear is at 1, 2, 3 sets, 4 sets. How many sets of bunker gear is that for 20 grand? Do you know, or is that just one?
Through the mayor to the councillor, that would be approximately 4 sets. They're about $4,500 a piece.
Okay.
We're trying to get a little bit
Thank you.
better deal.
So the curb and sidewalk program for 2026, if council will recall, in 2025, we had a budget of $120,000, which we spent all of. And in 2026, we're proposing to increase it by roughly 30,000 to continue on with the curb and sidewalk program work that we started last year.
Just to add to that, Sam, if you could, this year's to look after the deficiencies, that will finish that or catch up on that?
Yeah, to your worship, that's certainly our hope. Our hope is that this money this year, we could finish off with the deficiency list that we have. And then assuming no more deficiencies come up or we can get all the work done with that budget, next year we would look to just do more proactive work rather than the reactive work that we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think I already spoke to this with the self-contained breathing apparatus, but this is the fill station equipment that I mentioned at the last item, but I got the two combined.
Through the mayor to the chief, I believe this also includes monies to refurbish our existing equipment in Elsa Craig, correct?
That's correct.
So the next one would be the purchase of the rest of the tandem we purchased in last year, 2025, to finish it off. And then the next one after that is the calcium program, carried on, the program we run every year for maintenance on gravel.
Wastewater, pardon me, and stormwater rate study. If council will recall, when the wastewater rate structure changes came in front of council, we advertised that it was largely a process reset. The process that we had in place at the time obviously was not favored, and we were deviating pretty far from what industry standard was. So at the time, we had asked council to approve the rate structure change, which we did, but it was caveated on a few occasions that this would be treated as a reset, with staff needing to go back to the drawing board, get our rate studies updated, get projects in them that are actual real projects that we're going to be doing. And then future rate increases that we would bring back to council would be based on actual projects that are tangible and that are on the book. So this project here is to have those 3 studies updated so that when we bring future year rate increases to council, it's based on accurate projects that we plan to do and that are on our asset management plan.
Well, the next one is the refurbish our 2010 track list. From what I'm hearing through the grapevine that refurbishing might not happen anymore, so trying to jump on that train before it doesn't. And it's, so, yeah.
Deputy Mayor Hodgins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This refers, but I believe we did one, 2 or 3 years ago. Is this the same one or a different one? I believe we have more than one track.
To the mayor, to the deputy mayor, yeah, this is not the same one. This is the other one we have that's in Park Hill right now, and it is used between 2 departments, so it is ran all year round, so to get it refurbished and up to date would be nice for maintenance and repairs.
What's the advantage, if you can tell us, Brandon, to refurbishing instead of buying a new one?
The difference is from refurbishing to new is about 20 to 30,000 difference in price.
But there's some other benefits beside to refurbish.
Yeah, like refurbishing would be like you're getting out of the emissions area of the defit or the DEF and all that stuff that or regen and engines that you don't need to deal with. And with refurbishing it, they only keep 5 components of the trackless that is now. And it's mostly just the frame, brand new engine, all that stuff comes with it in the refurbish.
The next one is me. It is the wayfinding and communication strategy. And I just want to be clear that this project will only move forward if we are successful with the $50,000 from the ROD program.
When do we know about that?
It should be soon.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Nerda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Felicia, can you explain what wayfinding communication is and how it would be beneficial to the community?
Thank you, and through the mayor to the councillor. So we did a presentation on this previously at a separate council meeting where council approved this project moving forward. It was one of the most identified weaknesses within our municipality from the first impressions community exchange program that we did through the province with West Perth, that we do not have a formal wayfinding strategy. So getting the physical signage as well as the communication aspect of the strategy, and then to go with that would also involve the communication strategy, which would be all communications that we do.
And when will you know if the grant is successful or not?
So I was talking to some people from the province at Roma, and they said within the next week or 2, we should find out. The second opening of the program is set to be, we have until February 26th to apply. So they said if we don't get this round, try again for round
2. The next item is a land leveler drag. We do have one new one already that we got a couple years ago. This would be replacing an older one from township days before amalgamation. We have 2 more that are probably 30+ years old. So it's just replacing one of them, and we would sell the old drag and probably sell the eliminator that we have too, that is not being used, to help pay or bring back funds for this.
Just to your worship, I was one of the ones, I believe, that suggested we bring this one forward. It was on the list to hold off on. And in speaking with Brandon, I made the comment, we are doing everything else with regards to gravel roads. We're, continuing the calcium, we're continuing the gravel. We've done a lot of changes with staffing with regards to making sure that there are operators to operate the equipment to make sure that things are being maintained. And it seemed the last piece of it was to have 2 drags that are fully usable. I think we have one, and then the other one it can be used, but we didn't really have a third. Is that correct?
So yeah, we had 3, we replaced one already, replacing another, and the other one's still in good shape. So I don't see anything in the future to replace it. And we would keep it, use it as much as we can, but as a spare too.
So I'll speak to the next 2, and then maybe I'll provide a bit of preamble. Later on, the capital projects under the orangish color / yellow, you'll see lots of water wastewater facilities. So essentially what we did is for every water wastewater facility, be it pumping station or reservoir or what have you, We have what we call between Aqua and staff our long-term or capital plan for the next 5 years sort of thing. So every single one of these facilities based on Aqua and staff's recommendation should receive a set dollar amount every single year. So what you'll see in both this section and the sections after is every single facility and a set dollar amount to it. Every facility has different needs, and I'd be happy to drill down on any of the facilities, pardon me, if there's any specific questions to any of them. But the two in the top that are the water distribution system and the Victoria Street pumping station, I'll give some details on those for sure. So the distribution system, there are quite a few items in here that are mandatory, such as a yearly audit that we have to do, or things of that nature. Most of this cost is explicitly to do with buying parts. With all the work that we had to do this year, that was all reactive work, and you'll note in the 25 budget numbers, if you were to go through it, any of the proactive money we had set in 2025 was not spent proactively. It was all spent reactively on repairs and replacing stuff that was breaking. So what we want to do in 26, in addition to obviously the mandatory stuff, is restock up on parts that could include pumps, valves, pipe, hydrants, curb stops, that sort of stuff. So that is what the 550 captures, and that number may seem big. But when we start to get into pumps where we don't have spares and one pump could cost $50,000, that number kind of gets eaten up pretty quickly. So that is what the 550 is for. And then Victoria Street is on the top of this list because as far as facilities go, it is by far the worst one that we have. It's by far the one that we spend the most amount of money on from a maintenance perspective. So that 120,000 for Victoria Street is, bear with me, I'll flip to my sheet here. Is for, again, there's some mandatory stuff that we have to do in there every year, like wet well cleaning and things of that nature, HVAC work, but then there is some proactive work in there. We want to replace some pumps. We want to replace some valves, check valves, flow meters, general maintenance, that kind of stuff. So again, that money in there for Victoria Street, half of it, or not half, a little less than half is for mandatory stuff. And the other half is to hopefully do a bit of proactive work at that station to try and replace some stuff that that needs to be replaced. And then I'll just reiterate, all the projects down in the below list are the same sort of situation. So I do have copies of lists here if anyone would like to see the specifics on any of those.
Okay, the building condition assessments, this is part of our asset management plan. So what this is it's assessing all of our facilities within the municipality, looking at the guts of the building to a uniform at level 2. So we'll be looking at what the wiring looks like inside some of our public works facilities, what the foundations look like, where they're at in their life cycle. And this will be done across all buildings, and it'll go to level 2, which means they'll be looking at furnaces, what the guts of the furnace look like, and what our long-term outlook is for having to replace these.
So next is the tandem flatbed. So this is taking our oldest tandem, a 2013 International, taking the plow box off and make a flatbed to haul the water tank we have instead of using a 30 ton float. We've noticed last year with the float being used to do it, limited on staff that can do it because you need an AZ to haul it. And then wrecking the float, driving down the road a lot more on gravel roads. It would save on the float, and this I would utilize more staff hauling the water tank with more staff that have DZs. So yeah, and that's it.
So the water meter reader in 2025, the meter reader we have broke twice. So we're being recommended that it's likely at the end of its life cycle and should be replaced. So this is just to buy a new water meter reader. If we don't have an operating meter, there's no water wastewater bills that go out. So this is to buy a new reader that we feel we need.
So the next is replacement of the landscape trailer. This is the oldest trailer in our fleet. The last year we did a safety on it. It was rusting out quite poorly. So we will be looking to replace it with an aluminum trailer for doing our lawn maintenance. So. The next one is me as well. That's the replacement of the half-ton Chevy pickup. So this is one of the 2 pickups that has come due with our TCA policy. However, the other one you'll see has been kicked down the road because it's in fairly good shape. The last year we went on a safety for this one as well, and the frame's beginning to show signs of rot. So this has been one identified by our mechanic as one that's time to go. So we will be replacing it. The gondola upgrades, if I can ask Kent to speak to that one.
Thank you, Brandon. The gondola upgrades is for $6,500. That's to do some safety upgrades. There's an existing baseboard heater that is not functioning, existing exhaust fan that needs to be repaired. Looking to install a gate at the bottom of the stairwell just for safety or only allowing people that should be going up there. And some screening in front of the plexiglass for a safety concern as well.
Thanks, Kent. The LED resurfacing for the arena ice surface, currently we're seeing about 3 to 4 lights go down a year. This is the driver on our LEDs, which we put in 2015. With those going down, we're spending about $3,000 to $4,000 every year just on light replacements because we're having somebody come out, utilize a lift to replace it. The cost to do the whole rink is $17,500. We felt at this stage with how frequently these are going that it is time to relamp the surface. The following project will be one that you guys may recall. I've taken it to the last 2 budgets. The first year we took it, we missed the window. Just getting it out late for quote and trying to fit it in their timeline. Last year we were told that the schedule would be adhered to and no problem to make it. But then when the window was there, the contractor missed the window. So we will be putting this out to tender again this year. So it's the steel underneath the stands identified in a structural report from about 3 years ago from Dillon Consulting. The mechanical dehumidifier, this is to replace our 2005 Blanchard Nest unit. It's failing every year. We're having significant costs at startup trying to get it up and going. And then anytime there seems to be high moisture, it kicks out on pressure or something else. So that one is time in its life cycle as well as it is consistently failing. The boiler replacement, last year we replaced one of the boilers at the arena. We have 3 there. We replaced one of them with a high efficiency, but the other 2 still need to be replaced. We feel that by doing a second high efficiency boiler will be fine for the building's needs and demand. So we're just going to replace a second one and that'll be the end of replacing those boilers. The Park Hill Medical Center upgrades, you'll recall a report in renewing Dr. Olmsted's lease. He had requests of new flooring. Some of the subflooring is starting to go. So new flooring and painting of that facility. So that's what that project is. The soffit replacement at the East Williams Pavilion. This is the soffit that sits underneath the pavilion, heavily damaged from pucks from the rink out there. So as it continues to fail, it's one that's on the list that needs to be replaced. The paved pathway from the Park Hill Sports Complex. Last year, we were hoping to lump this in with the Public Works sidewalk budget. Unfortunately, with the deficiencies they found, there was just no money to get this project done. So this is a paved pathway from the parking lot that sits to the south of the arena by the tennis courts right into the pavilion as well as the washroom structure to increase the accessibility at that park. The aluminum accessibility ramp, this is replacing our wooden ramp that goes from the arena lobby floor onto the surface for the summer months. This is how we provide access to that meets AODA requirements. The current one is wood and it's very much put together by staff and continuously falling apart. And we've had comments that it's not the greatest. So this is one that we'd like to do in aluminum that's something light, easy to store, and we don't have to deal with rotting wood. The final one is electronic access control, which is just an extension of the project we did this year, trying to finish up the remainder of the doors as well as some padlocks.
Councilor Ken.
Thank you, Mayor Rapp. I do have a question for our road manager. I want to go back a page to the West Corner Drive paving program. Will any of those funds be redirected towards another opportunity?
So yes, about 375 of that would be for West Corners and another 375 to reconstruct Creamery Road.
So go ahead.
Just one more question, and this might be for Sam, I don't know who, this one might be, for the priority score. Is that something that everyone gets together and sort of evaluates, or then one person does it? How do we come up with that priority score? And what does it mean?
Priority scoring was a system I introduced this year where we had 5 categories. And each of the managers, based on the criteria for each of the categories, set up a score. And then we accumulated the 5 to come up with a number out of 100. And the idea was to try and make it as objective as possible as to what the value of the projects were so that we could rank them before we got into the discussions. And you'll notice that, there are some that didn't make the cut that have higher scoring than some that did. So it's not an absolute perfectly perfect process, but it was a beginning and a starting point. The idea being that you got points for having external funding. You had points for a project that was in support of an existing asset or program. You got points if it reduced risk or liability to the municipality. I forget the rest of them off the top of my head, but there was a sheet that was distributed and reviewed, and we tweaked it a bit. It'll probably get tweaked again. The idea is that going forward, when we bring in the new budgeting system that has its capital plan, it relies highly on a priority scoring to create the reports so that you can then go through. So it's just the first step towards that process. It's by no means complete yet, but it was a first stab at trying to take evaluations of the projects out of the subjective and into the objective in terms of how they compare to one another.
I like it. Well done. I like that.
I would ask at this time, does council want to hear about the ones that didn't make the grade, or you can just look at that on your own time? Councilor Nerda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess this is for you, Brandon, on the Parkhill walking trail upgrade. First of all, can you tell me how much volunteers have raised
Yep,
for
certainly.
this project?
So the Parkhill Walking Trail, which is Main Street Parkhill all the way through the ABCA property just north of Center Road, has a grand project total of about 130,000. So far, we've seen fundraising of about 30,000. I brought this project to council about a year and a half ago, saying it would be fundraised only. In looking at their fundraising efforts, I'm just thinking they may not get there, and I think it's an important project for the town of Parkhill. So I brought it to budget on that case, but in our current financial situation, it was one that I pushed.
Now, again, I just have a follow. Brandon, and maybe Councillor Cornelison, you can weigh on this, but is this something that the Asable Bayfield can either acquire or take this project on themselves? Or I just think it's quite an important project for residents.
So
And it'd be a
certainly,
shame just to not include it in the 2026 budget.
certainly we can work with ABCA while they are still in existence and see what we can get done with them. At least try and get it quasi operational with them. So,
Councilor, something to add to that?
Well, I think there was an email sent to Nathan, I believe, and he did respond to it, but I've not had an opportunity to talk with Nathan yet because we didn't have a formal meeting. We just had a striking committee meeting.
Okay.
And then just another question on this. Can the vibrancy money be used to fund this project? I don't know who this question's for.
certainly vibrancy by definition is for community improvement. So if council so wished, but the reserve aspect of it, Ralph would have to answer.
At this point in time, I haven't been making any commitments on the vibrancy for 2 reasons. One, there's a committee that is supposed to be bringing forward those recommendations. And secondly, I'm reviewing the accounting processes that have been happening for the last 3 years to verify what is actually the balance of that reserve. So until those two things kind of come together, I would hesitate putting it forward as a option.
Thank you, Ralph.
Deputy Mayor Hodgins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I may have missed the first part of that, which you may have just answered. Drew has said that $30,000 has been made in collecting from the trail. Where or who is got that money?
So through the mayor to the deputy mayor, currently the money is fundraised by the ABCA. They have a trust process, like a trust account that they use for trails like this. So rather than have a community group looking after a substantial amount of money or the municipality hold it, they have this trust that does it all the time. So it's been left with them.
Counselor Daigle.
In that case, should we not make sure that it's used before we lose our conservation authority? Because it's been fundraised by the people here for here, not for up by Barry.
So through the mayor to the councillor, I would certainly expect that any funded reserve that they would create for a process of fundraising would be caveated to that project. So I would think just because they were amalgamated, I don't believe legally they would be able to do that, but I'll look into it with Nathan and make sure that should this discontinue and disband, that the option be there for us to hold it in rather than the ABC or whatever they become.
Okay. Counselor Canellis.
I might suggest that we submit a delegation to the Conservation Board of Directors because it would be a board decision.
Are you making a motion? Are you making a motion? Is that what you were saying? Okay. Okay. Counselor Daigle. And that motion is?
You know, I think we got the brakes just put on us.
At Shovel Bay Field. Pardon me?
Thank you. And through you, I'd just like clarification on who you would like to attend and maybe if we could get the full verbiage of that repeated once more for me.
I will delegate myself, Councillor Nerda, Deputy Mayor Paul, to go to the Sauble Bayfield to discuss this $30,000 directly.
Okay. All right. So go ahead, Carol.
Your worship, through your worship, to the councillors involved in this discussion, I'm wondering, should we also bring up the remaining 100,000 that is it that able to be realized through the Sauble Bayfield as well, or even a portion of it?
That would be part of the delegation. Counselor Canellis.
I think before we go too far with it, and Brandon, I can't recall the response that we got from Nathan off the top of my head. Do you remember what he said in his email when you sent that one to him and he replied?
Yeah, so specifically on the email portion, I pointed out some of the funds they had received through land sales within North Middlesex specifically, and the large revenue source of that became, and whether we would be able to use some of that for the trail. And it was pretty firm from Nathan that it was a no, but that if we were not going to proceed with taking it through capital, that they would just figure out a way to utilize the 30,000 they had and leave it as is. So, you know, it maybe is a non-accessible trail to start off with. That was kind of where he was. But again, Nathan is he's a representative who works with us. So I think taking it to the board and trying to push some of those things may be good for North Middlesex.
My recollection of these funds is that they can only be utilized to acquire additional property or additional lands. It cannot be used for any other purpose. Okay, except for perhaps some of the financial gains made from investments that can be utilized, but it's often put into reserves or used to reduce the budget requirements. So that is an area that might be considered, but it's something that would take considerable persuasion, I believe.
Yeah, so perhaps the conversation becomes, if we were to sell you this piece of land for $1, you guys make the investment to finish the project kind of thing. But that would be at council's discretion.
Interesting.
That doesn't even sound positive from our own member of the board. So we have a seconder here with Counselor Nerda. In favor of that motion? Carried. I think you will. Okay, any other questions on these other reserves that have been projects, sorry, not reserves? On these capital projects, anything else in the capital projects? Seeing none, go ahead, Ralph.
All right, moving on to tab 5. One which Counselor Nerda was interested in earlier. This is a quick idea of where the tax levy is headed. It shows you the 0.76% increase in your normal assessment. It applies your tax policies to that. And when I say your tax policies, I mean tax policies of the county-wide organizations, which gives you your weighted assessment, which is drastically smaller than your gross assessment. And it's on that assessment that we apply your tax rates to build up the 9.9 million that we are collecting. At the bottom, you can see a whole bunch of math to prove out that although the actual dollar value is going up 5.94%, the actual rate increase is only 4.52%. So if you know what your assessment is, you can find your tax classification and multiply it by the municipal tax rate on this. And that will give you a hint as to what your bill from North Middlesex is before county, before school boards. Later on, after the budget's been passed and I come back with the levy bylaw or the tax rate bylaw, I'll have all 3 components and you'll see the whole picture at that time. I know that the county is 3.8 and I'm under the understanding that the school boards are flat again, but I'm not positive. I'm waiting to hear for sure. And once I have those numbers confirmed, then I can draft up what that full schedule looks like, which is the one that we pass in the bylaw. Any questions on the levy?
Questions? No questions or comments on it? Okay.
Now on to the morbid stuff. On tab 6, reserves. I've given you a little bit more information this year in that other than just the listing of your reserve and reserve funds, I've given you a second page which also shows you your deferred revenues. The distinction between deferred revenues and reserves, which is often missed, is that deferred revenues are funds that you've received in order to accomplish something specific, and they can only be used for those purposes. And if they aren't used for those purposes within a certain timeline, they have to be returned to the grantor. So obvious examples are the Canada Community Building Fund. You have a 5-year timeline in which to use those dollars, otherwise they expire. The Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund is a provincial version that is similar to that, in that you receive an amount each year automatically, but you then have to provide claims showing that you used it on eligible expenses in order to retain those funds. I spent probably 12 of my first 16 months here cleaning up the backlog of reports on those 2 funds themselves so that we wouldn't have to return to the $3 million that we had received over the last 3 years. So that's why they're here. They have been a source of funding for capital and other projects over the years, but they've never been included in your budget deliberations and or information. So I just wanted you to have a bigger picture. Another one of your deferred revenues, which are sometimes called obligatory reserve funds, are your development charges and your parkland reserves. Those again are treated as deferred revenues because based on the development programs and or different planning programs that these charges have been collected under, if those programs don't proceed as agreed to in the contracts, they need to go back to the developer who paid them. So they need to be tracked separately. This is a fairly new version of this section of the budget, so it's a little bit scarce on details. It does show you the amount that we're going to pull from reserves in order to do the capital. It includes both the water, wastewater at the bottom of that first page, as well as everything in the levy supported area. And it totals 7.1 million coming from the reserves. This year, unlike last year where I insisted that we include transfers to reserves that exceeded the amount we were pulling from reserves, just so we were safe. I'm only showing, because I missed it, the 7,000 going into the election reserve, which probably is a good thing given the year. What that means is that we're going to reduce the overall value of what's in the reserves. And there is a strategy behind that that I'm working with the CAO and the mayor on. And when that strategy is fully worked out, we will roll it out at that time. Up until then, I've been asked to keep it confidential so that if you want any further detail, please reach out to me offline. On the second page where we have the deferred revenues, you can see that we're expecting 570,000 from OSIF this year and another 201,000 from Canada Community Development Fund. Those are already being utilized, plus trying to draw down some of the previous balance on the CCBF. OSIF has been a little bit harder, how shall I say, to find eligible costs for. Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, although it's meant for infrastructure, it's meant for repairs and replacement of existing infrastructure. Whenever the word growth, expand, what's the other one, develop, gets used in any explanation of a claim, it gets denied under OSIF, which is one of the reasons why that number has drifted up, is because a number of times we've been trying to get money out of OSIF that it doesn't qualify under that grouping. It should more appropriately have gone over to the gas tax or the CCBF as it's called now and used from there. So some of this is getting our grant appliers to focus on the grants that fit with their projects. And that just comes with experience, which I'll be the first to admit I don't have enough. So that is bare bones is what is happening in the reserves and the deferred revenues that is incorporated in the budget as is. The one reason why I haven't asked for the increase or the transfers to reserves this year as I did last year is those are all paid for by levy. Last year, we got away with a bunch of external funding that was happening that, how shall I say, masked the cost of the reserves going to reserve. So we didn't notice it. If I were to add it in this year, at 1% increase to the levy for every $95,000, it doesn't take long to figure out what would happen if I had told you we needed to raise 7 million in reserves. Which brings me to the next logical question that somebody's going to ask. So let's move on to tab 7, which is your debt schedule, which is the total of all the loans that are outstanding. Again, on this page, Everything in blue is unaudited. It has yet to go through the auditors for verification, but I'm a little more confident on this page than I am the others when it's the blue section, for the simple fact that all of these have loan agreements and we've been making the payments and they follow the schedule. So it's pretty cut and dry. So I'm fairly positive these are going to be the right numbers. What you'll see is since the last audited statements, when we had just under 2 million in outstanding debt, we ended at the end of December 31st of 2025 at just under 10 million in total debt. So unconsolidated debt, the double line at the bottom, gives you the total. In between each of those double lines is another number, which is sitting currently at 1,010,000 and change. That is our annual repayment amount. So that is the number that you're seeing in the budget under cash requirements as to how much money we are paying to service our debt. That number is broken down into two pieces: how much is principal repayment and how much is interest charges. And that's shown on the two lines below it. Then the listing at the side, principal repayments by year, shows you how much principal we are paying in each of those years, going all the way through to 2047, because we have a 40-year debenture that was taken out in 2007 that will not clear until 2047. So there are a number of debentures already out there. You will see the 2.5 million that we got from the county of Middlesex as being the latest on the group added. You'll also notice that it has no interest because it was an interest-free loan. So it's just simply the 10 payments of $250,000 to make up the 2.5 million we received. The OILC loan that was outstanding and needed to be formalized that we did at the end of 24 went in as a balance in 24, but you'll notice that the first payment didn't come out until 25. Hence the reason why the jump over the last 2 years from less than 2 million to just short of 10 million. And that's where we stand with debt as of today. Any questions?
Seeing none?
And seeing none, what I would say is I know I've overpowered you with a whole bunch of detail. Please take a minute to digest it and reach out to me with any of your questions. If you have any needs for clarification, you want to understand better what a number means, how a calculation was done, please reach out to me. If your concern is more in terms of what is the ins and outs of a capital project or what does a specific program area do, please reach out through Carolyn to whichever director needs to respond to that type of a question. And we will try and give you as many answers as we can so that by the 9th, you can put forward whatever motions of amendments you'd like. That way I can cost them and provide you information on the 18th as to what the dollar implications are to make it easier for the motions to be voted on.
Okay. Councilor Canelson.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I do have a couple of questions and they're kind of in an obscure area. And that is under benefits. Is there any increase in the benefits package for senior management upon retirement for extended benefits? Is there any dollar amount there?
To my understanding, there isn't at this moment.
Okay.
I can clarify on that as well. There is not. There has not been direction from council at this point to offer those to senior management at this point.
My second question is there anything in the budget for new positions that will be created over the next year?
In the wages, there has been an allotment for 2 positions to be promoted from operator to lead hand. And there is a request for a part-time custodian position to be added. Those are the only new positions being added. All other positions that are in the budget have previously been approved, whether or not they were included in the prior budget numbers, which is part of the reason why there is such a steep number, because a lot of things that you have pre-approved during reports to council are included because you've approved them, but they weren't part of the 25 budget, so they look like a huge increase when in reality it's just bringing in those things you've already said to do.
And that's why I'm asking the question, make sure that what I'm approving is what I'm approving. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Ralph. So I gotta. Okay. So, yeah. Okay, Carolyn.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Just to reiterate, I believe Treasurer went through this already, but there is a public consultation period with regards to the draft budget. And what will happen at this point is the draft budget will be available on the municipal website for the public to review. If they have any suggestions, modifications to it, those can be submitted to our office via email or provided to the front counter or dropped in our Dropbox. We do request them in writing. And those will be received until 8 a.m. on February the 9th. As we are meeting with the mayor on February 9th at 9 to go over those potential changes suggested by the public as well as from members of council. Then all of those amendments together with the proposed final budget would be coming to council on the 18th.
Councilor Nerda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Carolyn, who do ratepayers email?
Ratepayers can email treasurer@northmiddlesex.on.ca.
Okay. Any other questions? At this time, is there any provisions that council would like to bring forward right now of adjustment? Amendments? Nothing at this time? Okay. Reading of the bylaw.
Actually, thank you. And through you, Your Worship, I'd like to pass the motion that's related to the report for receiving the budget. So let me pull that up one moment. Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. This motion to be considered is to provide council direction to staff as well as provide the concrete guidelines for the public consultation. And the motion that is looking to be moved and seconded is that council receives the 2026 mayor's draft budget and that council directs staff to undertake public consultation concluding February 9th, 2026, and that any proposed amendments, including those from council, be provided to the mayor for consideration at the special council meeting on February 18th, 2026.
First and second. Councilor Daigle, Councilor Nerda, all in favor? Carried. And third and final. Councilor Keough, Deputy Mayor Hodgins, all in favor? Carried. I just want to, before I call for adjourn, I want to thank everybody for coming in at 1 o'clock. It's appreciated. You never know what the weather's going to be like this time of year. And it's nice that staff can be here during working time and appreciate all of the support on that. So at this time, motion to adjourn. Councilor Keough, Councilor Nerda, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.